So again, this session is getting your feet wet. You are not alone. If you have questions as we go along, please feel free to chime in, raise your hand, and we'll take a segue. Move that out of the way. So a bit about me. And then just kidding. I'm probably more reminiscent of this guy. My name is David Dow. About 14 years in Drupal. My handle is Wolf. That's a 0, so W01F. On Drupal.org and Slack. I work for ECS. My company is ECS as a contractor for the FCC. So my main role is the lead web developer, team lead at the FCC. I've also previously worked on projects for the Forest Service and NTIA, so some agency background. Before then, I was both a volunteer and I worked for the agency at Peace Corps in DC, and I worked with the JET program in Kobe, helping them with their media initiative online lesson project. I love white chocolate cheesecake. I enjoy watching Shingeki no Kyojin, and I'm married to my wonderful partner, Danya, who puts up with all my shenanigans on a regular basis. I appreciate her very much. And then that's this guy. And then before all of that, I originally, my background is in microbiology, virology, immunology, and genetics, with a smattering of psychology. But I got those degrees, those 2 degrees, at the University of Florida. So, I mean, that's all nice, but why is all of this relevant to this presentation at all? And it's because web, tech, and Drupal communities are all comprised of individuals from absolutely wonderfully diverse backgrounds, right? It's like Drupal, people involved in Drupal and working with Drupal can come from anywhere and start at any time. And that's part of what makes Drupal such a vibrant and diverse and helpful and welcoming, community that drives Drupal as a CMS to be, more accessible and eventually more powerful than some of its other competitors. Drupal has thrived as an open source project despite the not insignificant learning curve it's notorious for. If you've been around, you've probably seen this or a similar graphic illustrating kind of, you see the blue, green, and red lines below is like some of the other, like I said, competitors or same space, CMSs. And then Drupal is this kind of, like you can kind of get into it, but then very rapidly it becomes challenging. So despite that learning curve, why is it so popular? Why is Drupal still fairly successful? And the answer is because of the community. Because the community is vibrant. We've got diverse backgrounds, educational, like the one I kind of highlighted with myself. I didn't come from a computer science background or whatever, but I find myself here. But also professional, cultural, socioeconomic, geographic, religious, like you name it. Like there's that whole community that's behind this and all working together and all kind of accepting and understanding that we've got all these amazing experiences that can contribute to this spectrum of support, community, contribution, and all that guides the project and allows us to make better decisions as a whole to drive it forward. And perhaps more importantly, for those that are just getting started, that diverse community is open, welcoming, and helpful. Okay, so the whole web Drupal thing is still quite a bit daunting. How does one tap into that community? How does one get started with those connections? And the answer is, well, if you're in this session or later you're going to be watching the recording, you're off to a good start. So what we're going to cover, we're going to go over Drupal.org basics, resources, and utilizing your account, Drupal Slack, and then a couple additional resources. So let's get started. All right, so creating an account with Drupal.org. Many people have already done this. It's not that hard to do. You just create an account at user register. You fill in a couple initial fields and you're off to the races. There's a lot that you can fill in. This is the first basic page. This is the second page. You can see there's quite a few tabs there. You've got personal information, your language and location, some Drupal specific fields, what previous work and current work you're engaged in, comments. I mean, there's a whole lot. There's a whole lot that you can fill in, and it's all selectively, optionally useful for what your intended use case and purpose for joining the community is. It's very similar to LinkedIn, I find, in some respects, but it's just a Drupal-y version of it. For example, here's my profile, and there's a lot going on that you can do, and it's useful for a couple purposes. If you build out your profile, it's good for potential hiring agencies that are like doing searches and trying to find you, and they can see what you've done. Like I point to mine just to like say, hey, I've done these other projects. You know, these are the issues that I've worked on or been involved with. It's good for potential clients, you know, who are looking for you know that. So you've been working in web development a while? Yeah, I have. Here's my page, you know, that you can go ahead and check out. It's on a reputable, you know, Drupal.org, you know, main site, etc. It's good for you know, prospective collaborators as well, and it's also good just for new folks that are looking for some ideas about what's available and where to begin when you're trying to dive into one of these like somewhat, you know, complicated and involved, whether it's Drupal, WordPress, whatever. Just like, where do you even begin? Like, there's so many points, especially with how complex the web is nowadays. But yeah, here on mine you can see a couple different things. I think I'm going to cover those in detail later, I guess. So you can check out and customize your dashboard, and the dashboard has a bunch of useful stuff on it. So these and mine isn't that customized. It isn't actually all that customized. You can go through and say what panels you want, and you can say, like, you can rearrange them and do all that kind of stuff. I haven't done any of that. I just make use of the layout as it came. But I find these particular sections to be the most useful for me. Your posts are are what you've starred as the issues that you find relevant or things that you're currently investigating, following, or you want to know like what's going on. You can star those, and whenever there's an update, it'll pop up to the top of your list. And so just about once a day, every other day, I'll come and I'll just Control Tab all those ones and check like what the status and the progress is, and I find that to be extremely useful. Drupal news. That panel block, whatever, it's infrequent but important information from the Drupal Association. Major releases, event notices. It's not updated very frequently, and it just kind of sits there. You don't have to reference it very often, but you know, I mean, it is just like major announcements that are coming out that you can follow. Planet Drupal, however, the one right below that, on the default view, is updated very frequently with news stories, tutorials, announcements, anything that's contributed by the larger Drupal community, whether it's agencies or like freelancers, or anybody can subscribe. Not subscribe, that's the wrong word. They can, I forget the word. It's a process where you just go through a process and say, hey, I've got this feed I want to feed in, and then they'll approve you, and then your content will automatically just be shunted into this list and allow you to post your blogs and all that to the community. I always try to check in with this one for recent postings, and I find it's really good to stay up to date with shifts and trends, new modules, updated modules, just loads of cool stuff. So I check that one every day. And then you like browsing for modules is really cool for several reasons. Generally, when I'm browsing on a regular basis, you select the version that you want. I usually just, you pick the one you're using. I use 10. I think I've migrated all my 7, 8, and 9 over. So I just pick 10. Then you can, then the only other field, I keep it very simple. I do works with, and then I do sort by. And I vary the sort by either with last release or created date to get those results. And then I just peruse like the next 10 to 20 results to see what's there. And that's always very informative as to what people are working on, what new cool features are coming out. It gives me ideas for my current sites, future sites, all that. Oh, wow, and then I have a huge block of text here that I probably already went over. Yeah, it just gives you ideas for new projects, integrations that are coming out. If you're new to Drupal, if you're new to Drupal, one of the things you can do is just most installed, and that'll give you a good blueprint for starting out a brand new site. You'll see all the most installed modules that for one reason or another have not yet been incorporated into Drupal core. And Drupal core is actually really good, has a really good history of going through the most used modules. Like, for example, a good example is like Views, right? Views was a contrib module in 7, now it's in core. And if you're just starting out, like, you want all the stuff that comes with core, but then if you just sort by most popular, you'll see the ones also that everybody else is using, and then like easy breadcrumb or whatever like that, and it'll give you a good start. And then they just generally follow the 80-20 rule for trying to select which ones eventually do make it into core. This is an example of a module page. When perusing the modules, one of the things I find most useful initially is just checking out the issue queue, seeing which issues are being worked on at present, what the latest updates are. You can gauge how well the module is maintained and updated this way. Obviously, you can research the issues that you're having, see if you find something that somebody has already posted or the relevant issue. And you can report new issues and contribute patches to the modules that you want to use or are using to improve their functionality, and that's always appreciated. And you can attribute that credit to yourself and or your sponsoring organization, which is really important as well. And again, all this drives that sense of community, and everybody's working on the same kind of thing, and just makes the whole project as a whole better. When you do find a pertinent issue that you want to follow, it's really easy. There's a green star button there that you just click it, and then it says following, and then you're good to go. Then it will show up on your post that I showed earlier on your dashboard. And then when you're checking on when it does post up on your dashboard, you click it, takes you there. Scroll to the bottom, and you can just read the last couple comments and see like if it changed status, what the work is being done, what the questions are. You can post your own comment. You can post your own patch or update. That's just keeping apprised of what's happening. And then you just enjoy. Then you've got your profile. You're off to the races. You're good to go. Easy peasy, pumpkin squeezy. All right, the next one I want to cover is Drupal Slack. Drupal Slack is also very, very important for getting connected, getting support, finding out information. The Drupal Slack channels, they're a great place to track conversations, ask questions, and just seek general guidance and help. The instructions can be found at drupal.org/Slack, nice and easy. To join, you just click the link under joining, or or you navigate to. Oh, I've got the wrong. So I goofed that up. Good job, David. I'll fix that later. It'll take you to this page, and here, all you have to do is it's just asking you to agree with the code of conduct. You check that box. You it puts in a request. I'm pretty sure that request, it used to be manually approved, but they did it pretty quick. I think it might actually be automated now. But you get approved pretty quickly. Then you just log into your Slack. Then you find the plus workspace button. You click that. Then you go to your Slack in your browser, and you're going to select the new one that you want to join. And here you can see a bunch of other options. Like I'm subscribed to the CDUG one. That's the one up in Seattle. I'm on the Vancouver one. There's one for like Ireland, like Drupal GovCon. Like there's a whole bunch of these different workspaces you can join for different purposes. You know, finding jobs, just tapping into those communities, seeing what they're working on, comparing what one community thinks is its priorities versus another community thinks are the priorities, and seeing where those overlap or not. You can be one of those bumblebees they were talking about in that previous session, where you can like go from one community to another, like helping to spread those ideas. Yeah, there's a lot of different options. And then like here are some of the channels that I'm subscribed to. Lots of different use cases, purposes, and all that. Address. There's one for Badcamp. Charts. Siki Editor 5 is a big one for Drupal 10. Commerce for if you want to get into the e-commerce space. Composer, just like you name it. Like there's just a ton.
Excuse me, those are all channels within the Drupal Slack?
Yes, correct. And the way that you can browse them is you go to channels, manage, and then browse channels. So you just go to the channels thing. There's a little small down arrow. You click manage, browse channels, and then a whole list will come up where you search for what you're interested in, and it'll give you all the different options that are available. And then you click into it, and then you click join channel at the bottom. So pretty easy and pretty useful. So now I'm gonna break out of this and see if I can just quickly, very briefly demo this thing. Okay, so this is mid-camp. Let's go to support. This is showing, right? Yeah, okay. So support is the general one. This is like the default like bucket. You can throw anything in here. And so if I have a question that's like, hi, does anyone have the example regex code that was shown in that AI demo at mid-camp yesterday? You just post a question there, and then I'm actually going to demo something you really should never do, but I'm going to do it for these purposes. I'm going to go to another one here, mid-camp, and I'm going to post the same question. And just to reiterate, you should never really do that. Like, people will actually call you out. If you're posting the same question or whatever in multiple channels, you should give it like, at least 10 minutes or something to see if anybody comes through before you just blast all the channels with the same thing. But I did it just because, well, I'm giving a presentation. All right. Oh, wonderful. Pretty sure I did this earlier and it was there we go. All right, now we're back to where we were. Click on, okay. All right, and then so in these channels, and this is I'm going to touch on something else out external real quick, but even if you're not looking for a job, even if you're not looking for work, one thing that I would recommend that I like to do is I subscribe or I get all these on all these job sites: contracting, freelance, jobs, jobs-remote, jobs-remote EMEA, which is the Europe, Middle East, Asia, jobs US only remote. I get on all those, and I like to follow them because it gives you a really good overview and understanding of the ecosystem as a whole, right? It tells you like what are agencies, NGOs, universities, like what are they hiring for? How are they expanding? What talents and all that are they interested in at the moment? What types of work are they taking on? What kind of clients? What kind of projects? And that just informs you as to, like, the trends and the shifts in the industry, right? And not just for Drupal, but for like the web as a whole, which is which is really, I find it really informative. Like, for example, one of the ones that I've followed recently over the last couple of years is the headless decoupled. Is that owning the space? How relevant is that? How much of my time do I need to commit to learning this? And that can go to any kind of topic that you're interested in. Paragraphs versus layout builder versus Gutenberg. How are different roles within the ecosystem changing? Back 10 years ago, like I only saw a job jobs being advertised for full stack developer, lamp stack, just like that, and then it was like junior developer, right? Like those are like the only ones. Nowadays, it's not. It's like you can be a back end specialist, you can be a front end specialist, you can be a social media specialist, you can be a obviously marketing and all that is its own over there. But then like I'm a Drupal architect, and then there's also like organization analysts, and there's like there's so many other different kinds of titles and all that people are advertising for. And it's because the web is just never going to stop becoming more complex, right? Like the web is never going to get simpler. It's just going to get more complicated. And as it gets more complicated, you're going to get new roles like, artificial intelligence prompt generator, roles that come up. And it's important to just be aware of those things. So when you're looking for work or looking for something to do, looking for a hobby, you know what the options are. Another resource that I really like is, here, I'll scroll back real quick, is usajobs.gov. If you're in the U.S. and you're a citizen or a naturalized citizen, like this is a great resource that I like to use. Again, just for seeing like what's out there, what's the federal space doing, all that. And I know that if you're not in the U.S., like most countries, like I know Auslan, Australia has its own one, New Zealand has its own one, Ireland has its own one. So any country or region is going to have its own specialized like search that you can look and see what their federal or local governments are looking for. They're usually fairly organized in that way. And it might not be specific for Drupal. You might see ones for all web development, but there's going to be overlaps for all those, and it's so just a couple more additional resources I use and I recommend. The Weekly Drop, that's a published newsletter. It's at theweeklydrop.com. If you keep up regularly with the Planet Drupal things that feed into your D.O dashboard, this one isn't going to be as useful. But if you only have time, like once a week or once a month, to catch up on stuff, this is a great resource, and they'll highlight some of the things that have come out, headlines, articles, tutorials, recent releases of popular contributed modules. I think they've even got one called like the 5% or something, where it'll highlight like a well supported but potentially like lesser known module that people are using, and I find that one really cool sometimes. They also highlight podcasts, upcoming events. Like it's a good online publication resource. So like this is a sample article that was on the Weekly Drop that highlights a lot of similar information as this talk. Just getting started, some tips, some pointers, other resources. The events page on Drupal. Getting involved with the community is very important. Locally, there's usually like Drupal meetups. Then you go to a higher level, and there are like these local camps that they do, like Mid Camp, Bad Camp. There's quite a few others, and in every country too. So there's the camps, and then there's the conventions. And there's usually a North America convention. There's a Europe convention. I'm pretty sure they do one in South America and Asia. But the events page will give you an overview of basically all those. I mean, here you can see like they're advertising the one coming up in Portland and the one coming up in Barcelona. I would love to go to the Barcelona one. But anyway, yeah. So if you're in this talk, you're in this room today, you're probably familiar at least with that page. And the last one is Drupal.tv. this one is a really good one if you're looking for tutorials or past sessions at any of the conferences and most of the camps where they recorded the sessions. You can come here, search, and peruse that vast library of recorded videos. Oh, and then if you're in several of the other sessions at this camp, you may have heard about Drupal Droid as well. This is really cool. It was put together by Michael Myers. I just want to quickly note that it does require you to subscribe to the ChatGPT Plus, which is about $20 a month. That's a requirement not just for Drupal Droid, but for any of those specialized GPTs that people come up with. Like, that's a requirement for that, so just be aware. But as far as like a GPT that's specifically trained for helping you like manage, navigate, come up with code, check code, anything like that, like this is like the way of the future. This is cool stuff coming out. Scary, but also kind of like, cool stuff. And that's the end of it. Thank you. And questions? Yeah, I blew through that. That was 30 minutes. Plenty of time for questions or whatever if anybody has any. Or if you'd like me to revisit any of the other slides. Oh, and we can go ahead and check in real quick and see if we got... oh, we did. Look at that. And that just happens to be one of my my mentors on my dashboard page, if you saw. And there it is. Perfect. So like when I get home, I'm going to use that, and I'm going to maybe even comment back out in this thread and be like, thank you. And utilize some of that AI goodness in my projects. So it is very useful. Obviously, that one may have been somewhat staged beforehand, but highly recommend utilizing the community, utilizing Slack. Super useful. Okay, now I'll shut up. Thank you.
Here for you. Do you have any recommendations about specific resources specifically for people who are learning Twig for theming?
Yes, the Twig or the theming channels on Slack would be a great place to start. Drupal is not historically great, but they are getting better at keeping better documentation for a lot of these like initiatives in 9 and now 10 and 11 coming up. So there are like how to start with Twig template theming. How does Twig, how do you do the initial Twig files in a custom module? How do you override Twig? How do you override like your core, your base theme Twig files in a custom module to do something specific you want? That's all. I know all three of those things I just mentioned have good documentation on D.O. So I would start there. See if you can find relevant information.
Maybe Drupal.org.
Yeah, Drupal.org. Yes.
Thanks.
Sorry, sometimes the shorthand that people I've seen is just D.O. as people put.
This is the noob panel, man.
No, I agree. Yes, 100%. 100%. Yes.
One other thing I think might be worth mentioning for anybody who wants to maybe try learning some of the stuff on social media. Mastodon, there's actually a Drupal Mastodon, I forget what they call it, but server basically. And so there's a lot of people on there that you can follow. You can get an account on there for free, and it can be just a great way to sort of have a bit of a finger on the pulse of what people are talking about. You can participate in conversations. So to me, that's a really good one. Also, probably they would be mentioned on the weekly drop or maybe even Planet Drupal as well. But there are podcasts as well that if you're interested in hearing about what people are talking about, what they think about the future, all that kind of stuff. There are multiple Drupal podcasts that you can listen to. So.
Absolutely. I'd check out some of those. They occasionally have speakers like Dries even and all that come in and answer questions and all that. So for sure, absolutely, 100%. And then Mastodon is just up and coming. With the decline of Twitter X, whatever it is. Yeah, no, Mastodon's on its way up as well, for sure. Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
I've learned a lot from Udemy. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but I bet everybody knows what I'm talking about, the training thing online. And I wonder if there's anything else like that that I don't know about.
From you to me?
Yeah, well, I mean, Udemy has a whole bunch of different courses on a number of different subjects, including a lot of Drupal and also theming with Quig. Anything else like that?
I'll tell you where not to look is LinkedIn Learning/Lynda. I've been disappointed with the
yes,
offerings on there.
Yeah, I didn't include it in this presentation, but Stack Overflow and IRC channels used to be the way to go, but I don't find they're the source for like super relevant information anymore. But yeah, the one you mentioned was U2Me. Is that the number 2?
Udemy, almost like Academy, but just a Udemy.
Udemy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Udemy. Thank you.
I've been using a site called Drupalize.me that my company has a bunch of seats for. I found that pretty good.
Yeah, there's Code Academy. There are quite a few. Most agencies actually have some kind of like learning resource, whether it's a blog or it's a learning series or something like that. Yeah, and a lot of those articles are captured on the Drupal Planet or something like that, so you can get your feet wet in one of those, and then if that takes you down a direction that is useful to you, you can explore it further. Okay, well, that was my presentation and 3 minutes of questions. Any last call before I end the recording? Cool.
Yeah.
Well,
Nice job. I have one more. I actually have one more. So.
yeah, please. We got plenty of time.
Yeah,
Like I'm not trying to rush this along.
So I want to get rid of my crappy Squarespace site because I'm gonna be a coder now. And there was a group talking about hosting your own Drupal site yesterday, and like, do you like if you're a learner and you want like a Drupal site that you could just destroy, but you don't necessarily want to do it locally? Are there good options?
But yeah, there's what's the name of the one where you can it's a standing Drupal instance and you can get on to test different modules and all that. It's called something Simply Test Me. Simply Test Me, right?
Oh, there's or like Drupal pod would be one of
Drupal pods, yeah. So there's ways you can test specific things like that. But if you're actually looking to like own your own, like almost any hosting provider, like Bluehost, SiteGround, like whatever, they all have like really low tier, like really inexpensive shared hosting that you could do, and then just you'd still have to get set up with like an IDE and all that to be able to install the basic Drupal profile. But I know that there's tutorials and all that for that stuff as well. But that would be how you start. You'd start off with just somewhere, or even on your local development, on your local laptop, spinning up a very basic site and then playing around with the modules.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing. I was kind of thinking like, how can I host a Drupal site without having to do all the security patches by myself all the time?
So automatic updates is coming in 11, so that'll help you with just being current with your security. And then if you're doing a new site, you're going to be on Drupal 10 or whatever anyway, so you won't have to worry about Drupal get bugs that happened previously. And if you're on hosting, which has a CDN or any of those other like secondary mitigation, whatever things, like that's going to provide additional security. But then I guess it does depend on what's your content, who's coming after you, what PII are you putting on there, as you dive further into it, you just have to be aware of what you have on there, and then what your level of exposure is, and then what mitigation tools and methods and all that you need to employ so that you're safe. But I mean, it's 2024. The web is a wild, wild west of So I mean, there's you could probably populate the next 10 years with security discussions.
You sort of mentioned it, but SiteGround, they've got an intro thing for hosting. It's like $5 a month or less.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you pay for the hosting, they'll let you have a domain, and it's a joke domain name that you wouldn't keep forever, but it has all the same security features that would be available on a real domain. And so if you're looking to check security just to see if anyone else can threaten you or something, that would be a perfect way to do it.
Absolutely.
That sounds like work, but yeah.
But most of the hosting providers are trying to provide some kind of like ease in, because they want your business. So they're going to try to make it as easy as possible for you to get something up and running and testable.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking about, I was in Benji's panel yesterday, and he was like, don't do your hosting yourself if you can avoid it. Like, find somebody who does Drupal hosting and does all the security updates.
Yeah.
But he didn't mention any specific providers that he thought were good for that.
They're all good and bad for different reasons. I keep jumping from one to another as their customer support gets worse over time. But and you're never going to get away from that either. But I would say, like, I've been doing Drupal now for 14 years to varying degrees of success, and I'm still exploring my options for self-hosting. Like with using DigitalOcean's even, which has some Drupal-specific config that they do. Amazon Web Services going into like an EC2 or ECS, bucket or whatever. Just the amount of config you have to do, for mail servers, other servers, any of that stuff. It adds a lot of there are DevOps people for that, right? So if you want to take that on, you just have to be aware that is a large chunk. So for most cases, it does make more sense. In a lot of cases, it makes sense to get a hosting platform that does a lot of that out of the box for you to get started, and then you can go and make loads of money and hire lots of people to do that stuff for you.
Just to answer your question about the Udemy thing, I think you can also use Coursera.
What's that?
Coursera. It has a lot of courses about different skill set. Yeah, I know University of Michigan has a lot of courses on there. Coursera.
So just for the recording, two other options that came up or resources were what was the first one?
Drupalize Me.
Drupalize Me is a good one.
Coursera.
And then Coursera, is that ERA?
Yeah.
Is there a hyphen?
No, it's Coursera.
Only one E.
Oh, okay. Course and then RA. Coursera. All right. And then the other one was Udemy. UDEMY. .org.com. .something. Okay. Cool. All right. Last call for questions for the recording. Thank you all so much for coming. Until next time.